Hey, folks, for episode 84 of the Rental Roundtable, we had on my friend Jeff Janczak. He's the president of Incus 5, based out of Boston, Massachusetts. Good friend I've known for a few years. We talked about product design and equipment rental technology and less is more. And it's how they really focus on taking features away and simplifying things through their integrations and their one platform to pull all your telematics and data into one spot. Talk about insights. The number one insight he's hearing from customers going the next year is how do you retain customers? How do you use data to retain your top customers? It's much cheaper to retain your customers than to go get a net new customer and how they're solving that problem. And lastly, talked about the transformative role of AI and how not now or not yesterday, but today and going to 2026, AI is being used to solve real problems and getting work done within rental companies. So really good episode with Jeff. Hope you guys enjoy. But everyone, welcome to the Rental Roundtable, episode number 84. We have on my friend Jeff Janczak. He's the president of Ecus 5, based in Boston, Massachusetts. Jeff, welcome to the show today.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you very
You
much.
know, well, I would say you're our first Ironman guy to come on today, but about 10 episodes, Dr. Vince Halefe, he's done maybe five or so, but I think you've got him beat. How many have you done now? 15?
I got a couple in there. I don't know. When I listened to that podcast, I don't think I have him beat. He's much tougher than I am.
All right, but you've done multiple Ironman. Do you have the tattoo?
Not yet. Not yet. I fight
You,
I fight the urge, I'll be honest with you.
you thinking about getting it?
A couple times I have
Yeah,
contemplated it. I have
yeah.
not pulled the trigger.
I've only done one, but I've thought about getting it. I think I don't have it. I've fought the urge myself.
Another day.
So, Jeff, first of all, tell us what Incus 5 is, and I want to hear your story about how you got here today. But for rental companies
Yeah.
listening, you're doing something pretty innovative. What is Incus 5?
Yeah. So Incus, so I'll talk about a little bit about the history first. So Incus 5 started out in 19. And they were doing a lot of custom development work for companies. It could be any company that wanted a custom application, could be around technical debt. They try to transition off of one technology stack to another technology stack. Um, and that was their sort of progression. I was engaged with Incus when I was at Track Unit, and Incus was helping me build some internal tools at Track Unit that we would use in the field. I was in charge of all the like sort of like field service the implementation, the customers, and then the installations and stuff. So basically getting hardware out to the field. And so I got to build a real good relationship with Mac. He was building a lot of my stuff. So basically we built a mobile app. We had a portal where we can measure and look at all the different trends that were happening, how many were getting done every week, what's the quality of those things. So that was a really good. So I built a nice relationship with Mac, and then in 22 I left Track Unit. Mac asked me to come on as a consultant, and then he asked me to come on into the management team in March of 23. So then around that time we made a pivot to what we do today. Is so what we focus in on today is we're a device agnostic operations platform, right? So what does that mean? The goal of what we do is to take a whole bunch of data, telematics data, service maintenance data. It could be mobile oil data. It could be some levels of ERP data. It could be customer data. Bringing all this data into one platform, allowing you to have full visibility, to have full context of your operations, like what's really happening out there. Right. So we refer to, from a product roadmap standpoint, that's like the experience, like bringing all this stuff in, right? And then we built tools on top of our platform to enhance that data. So how do we make that data that we brought in better than what it was when we brought it in? Like for example, we want to standardize it, fuel used, state of charge, bringing all these different aspects of the data that comes from different siloed vendors into one platform, make it make sense for the customer, right? And now coming in 26 is when we're going to launch the third leg of our sort of product journey, which is to expose with analytics and AI. So in essence, device agnostic platform focused in on data and operational, putting context to your data, and you kind of go through the life cycle of bringing it in, enhancing it, and now getting to the point where you're exposing it. And that's the journey we've been on.
So effectively pulling in I think when your background, you've 35 plus integrations. That sound right? 35 integrations,
Yep.
30 million records daily being processed, over 175,000 assets on the system. And you're
Yep.
pulling in all this crazy, disparate systems all over the place into one spot. You standardize it. And as you kind of go to next year, you're going to be able to generate analytics and insights on top of that.
Yep.
Is that a
Exactly.
fair summary?
That
And
that
what,
that's perfect summary. Yep.
and a lot of these rental companies, as you know, there's 30 different systems. None of them talk to each other. It sounds like the problem you're solving is bringing everything into one source of truth. And
That
is that right? And
that's exactly it. That's our mission. At the end of the day, if we're not solving problems, like what are we really doing here,
right.
right? We're trying to get to the root cause of the problem.
And what do your best customers say about the platform? Like in terms of business ROI or how you've made their life easier, you made them more money. Like what's at the end of the day, what's the ROI and what you're solving here?
Yeah. So majority of our customers, what they end up doing, within the first, say, quarter to 6 months, is they go from, I'll say, 8 to 10, say, different telematics vendors, right? What we end up getting is, I'm only going to buy from the manufacturer. I'm not going to, I'm going to keep my aftermarket hardware. I'm only going to buy from the manufacturer because my cost of ownership is that much lower, right? I'm going to renegotiate with my hardware provider because I'm only going to use the API. So, immediately they are getting some type of ROI because they are removing costs from
Uh-huh.
their basis on that side of the house, right? Immediately. Um, and then over time, what they'll end up doing is they'll migrate all to their, from the OEMs. It could be Genie, it could be JLG, it could be John Deere, Caterpillar, all of them, pretty much every manufacturer of a machine has their own, telematics provider, if you will, right? And that's just on the telematics side. We do the same thing with, mobility. With the mobility solutions, we sort of replace them. There's always like a migration process that goes through. There's a lot of times the it's the change management
Hmm.
is the thing that happens that they need to figure out, not necessarily the technology, right? So, usually within 6 months, they have their champions. I've identified these groups of people. Maybe it's a branch, maybe it's a region, whatever it is. The word gets out, kind of filters through, and everyone wants a little piece of it, right? So now it's accelerating like a snowball. Now everybody wants a little piece of this new action that we've occurred, right? And so now it's full deployment across the whole fleet, across the whole organization, whatever it may be. So that's typically what we're seeing with majority of our customers. But usually it's, that 3 to 6 months is sort of when that natural progression occurs. But the ROI comes from deprecating a lot of the systems and ultimately having access to the data that they, used to take hours and hours putting into spreadsheets,
Yeah.
right? Doing the VLOOKUPs and getting access to stuff and just having a different view and making business decisions based on data, um, versus intuition. I've been doing this for 30 years. I know, right? I know my yard has 80%, right? And, the reality is I know what they really have. So,
Right.
because the data tells me what they really have, right? And so
Yeah.
sometimes that's enlightening for them, right? I think another area that's very interesting that we find is on the maintenance side of it. Once we start putting the data in, and sometimes they fully transition over to our maintenance
Yeah.
module, or we're bringing in the data from their systems, but now they're having visibility. What what of my which one of my branches have the most overdue service assets? Which ones are on rent? Which one are sitting on the yard? Why are there so many assets sitting in the washroom status? Right? Why? Like, and so now it's very easy to get to, right? So now with analytics, now we can start putting exceptions to this stuff with KPIs and be like, okay, branch ABC, you have six things that can be done today, right? And so now we're getting from, we have all this data, now we're shrinking it down to like, these are your exceptions. So I think that is the true ROI in what we're doing.
Yeah, and you said the company started in 2019. You mentioned a pivot in 2022. What was the initial thesis, and how did you kinda pivot, and what were you learning that allowed you to kinda pivot towards this direction?
Yeah. So, I've been in telematics for man, number of years. I started with Telegis or Verizon, so that was the on-road aspect of things. And then I transitioned over to tracking it, which was the off-road. And I was always on the services side, right? So I always heard the customer. I was like the
Hmm.
voice of the customer to the internal groups, right? So for me, the natural inclination was, what problems can I solve, right? Because Mac had such deep knowledge in technology, right? I knew that we could go and solve problems with technology that are real life, that right, that could go solve for the industries that I knew the most, right? And so we focus in on, I'll say off-road, if you will. So rental and construction companies
Hmm.
are our sort of our cup of tea, or our focus, if you will. um, and the yin and yang with Mac and I, with the technology side and understanding, and me understanding requirements and kind of speaking the language of the customer, right? I'm going in and asking questions that I know are traditionally the problem areas, and that's when the floodgates open up. So now I'm really getting real data, so we can go and solve, right? And the other aspect that we try to do very uniquely is, we don't want to just go build a software. We want to build the software that the customer is looking for. So we try to take customer feedback into our platform, right? And then you always have to start at a place of parity, right? You can't have something that is traditionally for everybody that you don't have, right? But how do we take it and enhance it and do it differently to go solve the problem, not just do what everyone else is doing, right? And so technology, or from a technology snack wise, we do everything in a single tenant, which then allows us to, bring in the AI and have their own link, LLM. So they're looking at their own data and coaching their own data. So we've done things uniquely based on my business experience, and honestly Rob's business experience, our VP of sales. And then Mac meshing that technology experience that Mac brings in, enterprise technology experience. He kind of grew up in the mining industry. So we kind of combine all those things, and the synergy just has really been fantastic. Um,
And I think that, a lot of technology people, they just start building software and they never actually pause to understand, is this something the customer wants? Are they going to pay for? Are they going to use? Right. And you guys been able to spend a lot of time with customers. And your background, you were at Track Unit before this. It sounds like you had some equipment rental experience at that time as well.
yeah, that was probably a good 6 years, 5 or 6 years in my, and so we did some of the larger companies in North America, when I was at Track Unit. So I had a good breadth of experience with them, understanding the problems that they are trying to solve, right? And how could we get to those problems, right? And we wanted to take a different take on it. Like, I didn't want to transition us over to go, oh, we're going to sell a piece of hardware. We wanted to do it differently, right? Because
Hmm.
we knew that a majority of customers already have hardware. What am
Yeah.
I going to go sell another piece of hardware?
Yeah.
Right. So I understood the barrier to kind of get all those.
Yeah.
So we wanted to take a different approach.
Right.
Like, I didn't want to go solve the same problem that everyone else is going saying. I wanted to say, like, you already have all this stuff. Let's just make it better for you. And
Mm.
that is the thesis of what we're on the road to solve.
Well, many times less is more, right? People have 8 different hardware providers. You're like, you weren't like, "Hey, we're gonna give you 9." Now, what you effectively say, you're gonna go from 8 to, and you're like, mentally like 1, because they're gonna bring it all into one spot, right? And that's a huge benefit. So many software people, and I'm guilty of this, is like, "Oh, you want a new feature? Let's do a new feature." We now have 150 features. Next year it'll be 300 features. Next year it'll be 100,000 features. And that's not what people want. Like, the best designed products are very simple. And
Yeah,
you kind of go
it's
up this
easy to
curve
fall
of
down the
like
path, though. It's
very
easy.
complicated and very simple. And you guys went for, how do we simplify what's already out there? Right? Let's not add more complexity.
That is always our objective. So anytime we get any requests or whatever, we try to kind of step back and say to ourselves, how could we put it in the platform that is generic enough that we can
Hmm.
utilize for others, right? And knowing that we've decided to go from a technology stack to a single tenant, we can give that particular customer the experience that they're looking for, knowing that we've built this component for others and can utilize it for others in the way that they may want to utilize it, right? Or may not want to. So we just don't turn it on, right? Um, so we intentionally try to do those things, right? Which maybe slows down the cycle, but we haven't experienced that yet today,
Yeah.
right now.
Well, I mean, I just think about going from 8 to 1 or whatever, just that alone is a huge, improvement, and so many product leaders, like, just add stuff, and it's very rare to have people who pull stuff away. It's very hard, it's counterintuitive, but, like, the best products are the simplest products, and you guys been able to do that.
Yeah, I mean that again, that's the objective. I think it's a challenge, right? Because I think a lot of companies are so used to what they had. Just because you've had it doesn't
Yes.
necessarily mean it's right. So sometimes you have to you have to adopt, you have to try to evolve with them and get
Yes.
them to that thinking. But ultimately, with our customers today, you know, with all of the customers we have, they have grown to appreciate the less is more because the
Mhm.
problems that they have are actually being solved. So they're not
Mm.
actually missing this thing,
Mhm.
right? The map is a huge one, right? They're like, oh, we want to see the assets on there. We want to be able to right click, right? Right? But if I give them another way to look at the world that actually solves a problem in an easier way, they're like, I probably don't actually need that. So now there's that trade-off and we have dialogue. So now I'm building a better partnership with them because they're trusting that I'm listening to them. So it kind of goes both ways. But by the way, not easy. I'm not saying we've conquered or have the secret sauce here. It's a continual progression for us as we
Yeah.
we grow and mature as well.
We certainly deal with that too. I would say, if I had to guess, 90% of the rental companies who have software today, probably 90 plus percent, have what I say legacy rental software, which is built before the year 2000. And what
Mhm.
happens is when you're on software from 1982 and it's now 2025, 2026, and you're switching to our software, other newer softwares. They're like, "Hey, can you do it this way?" And it's sometimes, yeah, we should, but like a lot of what we're trying to do, we're not trying to rebuild the old way of doing things. And there's a balance there. There's the art of like, there's certain best practices around how you do a cycle bill that shouldn't change. Like, let's kind of port that over. But there's new ways to interact with the customers digitally that were not possible 20 or 30 years ago. And that's the challenge is you're working with your customer and you're bringing them into the new way of doing things, and it's also the balance of you know the tried and true way. There's a lot of value in that. At the same time, you're not trying to rebuild all the old stuff all over again, right? And that's sort of the approach you came in. You came with a different approach. We're going to do a little bit different.
Yeah, yeah, and I've had the luxury of having been there, so I got to
Yeah,
experience a little differently, and we've got to build it from the ground up, right? So we could
yeah,
decide what our technology stack's going to
yes,
look like, right? When you look at your industry, right? If you're talking 20 years ago, my guess is that a lot of those customers are still on-prem, right?
yeah.
Potentially in the cloud. So like, that challenge of getting from on-prem to the cloud, like I sort of remember that being with software companies. That's not an easy one. Like that's
No,
not an easy one for companies to transition to, right?
right. Tell me about some of the industry insights you're seeing. You were tracking it for a while. You're now, uh, at Incus 5 for a while, and you're seeing all this data, like, 30 million records a day. You're seeing all this data. Where are you seeing the industry going, the equipment rental industry? What are you seeing right now?
Yeah. So I think one thing that's been interesting that I've heard from multiple of our customers is how do I the cost of getting a customer, our customers getting a customer is very high. Once they get
Mm,
them, how do they keep them? Right?
mhm,
How do they keep them, right? And so that has been a focus of ours, is that we refer to it as the customer's customer. So once the customer's customer gets that customer, they take it from another rental company, right? Whatever it may be, how do we enable them? How do I give them access to the stuff that they've rented? How do I give them access to the stuff they've rented from someone else, right? And then how do I bring in the stuff that they already own themselves into my platform? Right? And because we are device agnostic, it gets a little easier. I don't have to worry about it, right? So if you think about a traditional rental company, right? Is rental company A gonna want rental companies B data in theirs or want to share? Like, I'm a neutral ground. It doesn't, right? I'm a neutral ground, right? So all of these things now become possible for their end customer, right? And so now if I'm rental company, I'm providing a service to my customers that they don't necessarily have access to, right? And if I start off basing and say, look, here's your utilization of your of the machines that you're renting or the ones that you have on site. Here's where they are. Here's where they are in the map. Here's the utilization of them. Here's the ones that are due for service that we need to get out to, right? Oh, by the way, you can right click on it and you can take it off rent,
Mm,
right? And invoke a work. So now you are becoming stickier with a customer, and now your relationship becomes a lot stickier, right? So this evolution with the customer's customer, I think will be one of the biggest areas that we will be solving for, right? So, when I look at our roadmap, over the next 6 to 12 months, we're going to be enhancing that. What does that customer experience look like for the end customer, right?
mm,
Their end customers, right? Do they want to go and sell a package, right? To potentially get some revenue from selling to their end customers, right? All these different avenues that are possibilities that we are exploring with our customers and how they want to do it, because again we try to listen to what they want, what they're looking for. I think is going to be I think that piece, the stickiness, is really going
mm,
to be really critical, right? The
mm,
table stakes of getting the data in, bringing all that data in, getting your customers. It's the same thing with us. Most expensive part is going to get the customer,
mhm.
right? Probably similar to for you.
Well, a lot of data have said it's something roughly around, 9 times cheaper to retain a customer than to get a net new customer, right? It's something
Yeah,
crazy like that. And so the phrase we use, our rental companies, we call customers, then the end user, we call renters. So that's the
the
jargon we use.
renters.
Where you're talking about one of the main uh, opportunities kind of going into 2026 is for using data for rental companies to better engage and retain their current renters. Is that right?
Absolutely. Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. That's perfect. Yep.
And
Exactly.
I was actually talking to so we were at the an event this fall, and they pulled the rental companies and said, what is the number one challenge going into 2026? And they said, well, we want to grow revenue. And everybody does. Not everybody. I would say I talked to some rental companies like I literally can't I have no more yard space until I get another location. I cannot grow. But 90% of rental companies, the number one thing they'll probably say going into next year is they want to grow revenue. And there's two ways to do it: is to get net new customers, which is expensive and hard, and the second option is to retain and engage your current customer base. And I think oftentimes your net new revenue probably comes from your current renters renting with you more often, right? And I think being able to use data and insights to predict that, to know that you've got 1,000 renters, renter number 283 is exhibiting behavior that may indicate that they're likely to churn. Like, what if AI could understand all that and proactively prompt you to say, go call that customer, right? And I think those are some of the things that are now going to be possible going into next year is using
Absolutely.
data to better retain your customers.
Yeah, I mean that's the whole AI journey. So how do you get smarter with less, right? I mean, that's the that's the path that we're going on, right? And that's what the analytics that we're offering is. It's like, what's the insights? Here's this data. What insights can you pull from this data, right? They're not engaged. They haven't logged in X amount of days, right?
Mm,
They're not utilizing their machines, right? Am I going to have a credit issue at the end of the month where they're going to say like, I didn't use my machines. Now I want you to give me a credit. You can proactively get to those customers now because now you
mhm,
have access, right? Not only you have access in the back office, right? But you have access as a salesman for your customers that you either inherited or went out and got yourself. So this hopefully this cycle will this keeps it in contained, right? But again, I agree. 9 out of 10. It's the same thing for software companies, right? It's easier for me to go to my existing customers, right, than it is to go and get them, right? I have access. I talk to them at least every 2 weeks. Every one
yeah.
of our customers, we talk to at least every 2 weeks. Sometimes every weekly, right? How do we? It's easier to get to them than it is to go get some, right? Especially in enterprise, we focus a lot on enterprise customers, especially early on here. So yeah, it's something that we are focused in on our side
Yeah.
is the renters, like you said.
One, I think rental companies do very well. If you don't take care of your customer, someone else will. And, for software companies, recurring SaaS companies like ours, it's a recurring nature. And the companies are worth so much money is because you retain your customers. And rental companies are very similar to that. It's like most of your business is repeat renters. It should be. If you're not, you
Yep.
have a real issue. And the core of all of these growth is retaining and growing your customer base. What about on AI? That's sort of the topic that's, I think
Yeah.
it's gonna win Time Person of the Year, it sounds like, artificial intelligence. It's just crazy. Everybody's talking about it, everything's AI now, so I sort of feel a little, uh, you know, jaded by that in a sense, but I also recognize how, transformative it is. I think it's been the biggest technology shift we've seen. I mean, how do you think rental companies are gonna adopt AI? Do you think it's overhyped, or do you think it's something that's really gonna change how rental companies operate in the future?
No, I mean, the reality is, I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, everyone's using it.
Yeah.
I mean, my view is everyone's using it, right? Are they using it within their business in an effective way? For me, is a whole different question,
Do
right?
you think they are?
I mean, in some form or fashion are
Yeah.
using it, right? But so the question is for us as software companies, right? How do I integrate AI in a meaningful way that improves what is currently occurring or is current processes, right? And so that's the problem that we focus in on. That's what we're going to do with AI. We're going to go and say, hey, don't worry about analyzing this, right? Why don't you just ask your data a question, allow it to give you an output, and then you can start training how you want to talk and communicate with your data so it knows when you ask a particular question, you can go get that answer, right? So now you're not right. My guess is what's occurring. I don't know because I haven't researched this, right? But by the way, I do a very similar thing. Being into business is
Yeah.
I take a whole bunch of data, I put it out there and say, analyze this data because I don't have a place to go get this data in one place myself, right? So I'm doing the same thing. I use Claude. I mean, no secrets here. I put it in Claude. I say, analyze this or review
Mhm.
this and give me a synopsis for a recap so I can send an email, right? How do I take that same thing and put it in my software to enable my customers? That's what we're focusing on. And then I think over the next, I don't know, 12 to 18 months, you're going to be able to do tasks with it. You're going to be able to say, "Hey, I swapped out this unit in this machine with this one, right? Or can you take this list of machines and put them in the watch for
Yeah.
status?"
Mhm.
Then now you're potentially saving time and productivity time with your staff. So that to me, that's how it's going to evolve. We're not going to go from zero to from zero to 100, right? I think we got to kind of take it step by step, and kind of mature through the process. That's
And what
that's how we're approaching it.
I think what you described as second level was sort of agents. Is that what you're talking about? Agents
Yep,
that can actually
agents.
autonomous agents to do work. And I think that's what we see. I think first level is Chat GPT wrappers with a
Yep.
W. You not Eminem rappers, or 50 Cent
Yeah,
rapper, but like
exactly, exactly.
you wrap your data with a ChatGPT product, which is what you're doing today. You're taking your data and you're putting it in the ChatGPT manually, but like, what if that could be directly integrated into your software? Like, that's the first step. That already alone, game changer. I think very soon and happening now actually is I think these agents that can do work that rental companies don't want to do, they don't have time to do, and it starts to replace labor and at some level. And
Yep,
that's where I think this gets even more powerful. Potentially, like you think about, I think about ChatGPT is like 10 times better than the current thing. I think agents are 10 times better than ChatGPT. Like I think it could be that is like the path that this could be on, and that is a totally transformational path that we've never seen before. Bigger than going to the cloud, bigger than mobile, bigger than the internet. Because what we're
totally.
talking about is potentially a replacement for labor, not taking people's jobs, but taking jobs that weren't being done to begin with, right? And they're a fraction of the cost, they work 24/7. They're just as good or better in certain tasks, right? And I think having these agents within this core workflows, I mean, man, that is a different world we're living in.
Yeah, even our internal strategy is
Yeah.
to get to a place where we have managers overseeing 8 to 10 agents doing work. So when we come back in the morning, that work is done.
Mhm.
We train the right, and then we're right, and so that we're doing the same thing. So how do I take that same thing and replace it and do the same thing within my software? Is our objective, right? I mean, I would say we're probably 60% more efficient in doing our, releasing stuff into our
Mm,
platform than we
mhm,
were even 18 months ago. It's 12 months
mm.
ago, 6 months ago, which I couldn't have anticipated. I mean, I didn't anticipate that, you know, 3 years ago. And so it's been transformational for us internally. So imagine what it's like for our customers.
Yeah, which ultimately is good for your customer because you're shipping features faster. Are you guys using AI to write code? I imagine as part of this too. I mean, we are.
Totally.
Yeah,
We absolutely are. We use a series of bunch of different ones. I mean, Max got his
yeah, yeah,
favorites out there.
yeah.
I
I know.
mean, so yeah, we do absolutely. And so like, it's just saying the stories that Mac gives me around what he does. He's like, oh, I just did this thing over the weekend, and I thought it was going to take me 12 hours, but I put it in there in 3 hours. I got what I needed. It was amazing. It
Yeah,
was better than I could have done, which is unbelievable, honestly.
yeah. There's
What does
some
that mean?
areas.
I don't know.
Yeah, there's some areas I've seen it. It's like 1% better, and there's some areas that it's like 100,000% better. It's just doing things that would never be able to be done, and overall, that nets out to 60% or something. But like, it
Yep.
really is crazy, and I think it's going to help rental companies in a major way, and not like 10 years from now, but next year. Now this is happening
I
now.
mean, that's where we're going. We're gonna introduce it. We're gonna start training it. We're gonna start bringing it to market. We're going to ConExpo in the first week of March, and so yeah, it's out there. Customers can use it, and come try it out. Like we got nothing
I'm gonna
nothing to hide.
We've got our big booth at the ARA show, but I'm gonna go to ConExpo after, so I'll have to stop by and see the demo, if you
Yeah,
guys
yeah,
have a booth.
yeah. You
Um,
can go ask the data questions all you want. Yep.
I like it. Well, when you think about next 3 to 5 years of this industry, where do you see things going?
It's interesting. I think we probably stay a little bit on this path, and I think AI is going to be the transformer as I see it here. I think there'll probably be some consolidation. When I look at like hardware providers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like I don't I find it I find it hard to imagine like all the like let's just use telematics for example, because that's the world that we primarily live in. Like how do manufacturers continue on the path of providing a software when they're really manufacturers,
Mhm,
right? Like how do they
mhm.
continue on that path? Like is that an investment that they want to go make, or do they partner?
Yeah.
So like I think that to me is going to be then I think the world opens up a little bit for them, right? Because I think, they're the conduit for data silos. They're like, oh, you can get into my system and you can do this here, and then you got to go to this one to do that one, right? They're sort of the conduit. They're the sort of the thing that are making these data silos, right? But someone eventually will get brave enough to be like, you know what? I don't want to do that. So I believe that that's where the industry is eventually going to go on that side of it. Um, there'll always be aftermarket. I don't think that will go away, right? There's always going to be older machines. There's always going to be stuff like that. So I think that's where it's going to go. But I think AI is going to accelerate this stuff 2, 3x,
Yeah.
um,
In some areas, I
100%,
think I think 10x. Like, I
10x
think
easy.
it's a
Yeah,
total game changer in certain areas, and I
I was
do
being
think
conservative.
yeah. Well, on the telematics side, I worked at a telematics company. Zuby actually was my first company,
Zuby, yep.
2014. Zuby, remember Zuby? And I think back then, I think even now, a lot of people. The reality is, the telematics companies are hardware companies, and they can be very. They're going to hate what I'm going to say, but in some areas, they very are become commodities. And the way they differentiate is talk about their superior software sort of thing. If that goes away, I think that starts to go away with some of the stuff you guys are doing, right? Because ultimately, people don't want to log into 8 different systems, and they want one system, and they want it all in one spot, and that's what you're solving. I don't think the telematics companies can solve it unless they can get to 80% market share, which is never gonna happen. I do think you're right. I do think the telematics companies to start to become commoditized, and there's data layers like Incus 5 or other places where you can pull everything into one spot, analyze it, and you run your whole business in Incus 5. You're not logging into the track unit portal or things like that. That's probably where I think this goes, which align with what you're saying.
Yeah, that's what I believe over the next years. And by the way, it doesn't mean one of them, because they have such a big distribution, won't also go down that path, right? There's
Yeah,
nothing to say that, right? I mean, it's just like like Apple and Microsoft, right? They have
yeah,
distribution is so huge. So I think those are all the different possibilities, right? But our philosophy is like there's enough out there. What is the construction and rental industry? 23 billion or whatever it is every year and growing, right? listen, if I can go get a piece of that, that's our philosophy. There's enough for all of us
That's right, and it's growing every year. I think,
every
yeah,
year.
I mean, every year it's growing, and it's outpacing GDP, and construction's booming. And probably could go back to AI. Well, someone's building all these data centers, right? And whatever the trillions of dollars being committed to that, which maybe is too much, but it's all good for rental, right? It's happening right now. So
All good. I was just in Texas last week, and I mean,
Texas,
honest
yes,
construction everywhere. I mean, everywhere. I'm in the Northeast, so I
yeah.
don't see as much. But Texas, it was. I mean, everything was under construction. It
We
was
talk to a rental company
unbelievable.
almost daily in Texas. That is, like, insane. So I and it's also we talked about earlier before we got on, like, the sort of the American entrepreneurialism, you know, Texas, equipment rental, starting a rental like, running an independent rental company, that's all those things combined, right? And it's booming
Yeah, it's
right now.
booming. It's booming. It was. I honestly like. I was in awe driving up 35 and down 35. I was like, I cannot believe how much construction is going on. It is
Yeah,
unbelievable. And not just small little projects. Like we're talking huge mega projects, miles and miles and miles of construction. It's unbelievable. So
it's
it's
crazy.
alive and well. And you look at all the investment going in AI today with data centers, it's some big money, man. What is it? Like 70% of all investments going towards AI companies?
It's
Big.
crazy. It's driving the whole stock market right now, and will be interesting to follow along. It's a great time to be in rental and to be building right now, especially if you're in Texas. But Jeff, I appreciate you coming on. We're just out of time here. Last question I'd like to ask: best career advice you've gotten that's helped shape your success, what you're doing today.
I think the one thing that I'm always not great at, and the one thing that I think I take, which is run your own race, right? Run
Mm,
your own race. There's no reason to, you can go and look in LinkedIn, you can go and read all these articles. Everyone's out there trying to run and show what they're doing. I think the most important thing for anyone doing what you and I are doing here, which is to go run your own race, right? There's a million ways to go do it. There's no reason to go follow someone else's path. And by the way, just because they tell you that's their path doesn't necessarily mean their path. So I say
yeah.
run your own race. That's the one thing I always say to myself, Jeff, run your own race.
Mm. Well, tied back to the triathlons we talked about, it's very
A
important.
little
And a lot
bit.
of the endurance stuff, a lot of it's like you talk to a marathoner, people say, "What was your time?" If you talk to an endurance athlete, they'd be like, how did it go?" Right? And I think what you're talking about is more the how did it go? Like it's less about comparing yourself to others and some benchmarks sometimes, but like, are you building the company and the life that you want to build? Right? And I think that's a very different question. And I love what you
Yeah,
just said there.
are we solving problems, right? When I go run the
Yeah.
race, did I accomplish the goal, which is to go finish the race? Isn't that ultimately what I'm trying to do is finish the race?
Yeah. Are you
What's
proud
the
of the
difference like
race
an
you did?
8:30 or 8:37? Like who cares, right? I mean,
Yeah.
really,
People
honestly.
ask me what my Ironman time is like. I don't know. I could tell you it's 4 hours or 30 hours. And either way, it's not gonna be a big deal.
All right, you got to where you need to get to, which is the end, right? Is that's exactly how I feel. So I think run your own race is the thing that I always try to focus myself in. Not always great at it, but I always try to go back to and think about it.
There you go. Well, Jeff, thank you for coming on today. It's great
Thank
talking
you.
to you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.